Emma stood by the window, staring out into the bustling city of New York. The city that had once felt like home. The city that had witnessed her dreams come true yet now. It felt cold, distant. She hadn't realized how much time had passed since Jake had walked out of her life. The same city, the same streets, but everything had changed. So much had changed. 3 years. It had been 3 years since that fateful day, the day Jake left her, the day their life together, their love, crumbled into dust. She could still feel the weight of his words, the sharp sting of betrayal. He chose his empire, his success, over her, over them. And in that moment, she had lost everything. She didn't want to think about it anymore, but it was impossible not to. Every memory, every touch, every whispered promise, they were all still with her. Even now, as she stood here, the echoes of their past surrounded her. The love they shared, the pain that followed. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced down at the screen. A name she had not expected to see, Jake. Her heart skipped a beat, and before she could stop herself, she answered. "Hello," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Emma." Jake's voice came through the phone, low and uncertain, but unmistakably his. The man who had once been everything to her, and yet now felt like a stranger. Her heart raced. What was he doing calling her after all this time? After everything that had happened? "Jake, it's been 3 years," she said, her voice shaky despite her best efforts to keep it steady. "What do you want?" There was a long pause, and Emma could hear his breath on the other end of the line. Steady but heavy, as if he was preparing to say something that would change everything. "I know I don't deserve to ask anything of you," Jake started, his voice filled with regret. "But I need you to listen. Please, just hear me out." Emma's grip on the phone tightened. She had spent so long convincing herself she was better off without him, but hearing his voice again stirred something deep inside her, something she wasn't ready to confront. "I've moved on, Jake," she said, her voice colder than she intended. "I've built my life without you. I've done what I needed to do to survive." "Emma," Jake said her name like a plea, as if her name alone could undo the years of pain. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were. I just... I need you to know the truth. I made mistakes, huge mistakes. But I can't keep living with this guilt. Not when I know what we had, what we could have had." Emma felt her pulse quicken. The truth. That was the one thing she had always wanted. But was it worth reopening old wounds for? Was it worth reopening the door to a past she had buried so deeply? "Jake," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "what could you possibly say now that would change anything? You walked away. You left me. You left us." The silence between them was heavy, like the weight of all the years they had lost. "I chose the wrong things," Jake admitted, his voice raw. "I chose the empire, my career, my success. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was wrong. I never should have walked away from you. You were always the most important part of my life, Emma, always. And I've regretted it every single day." Emma felt her heart ache. It wasn't what he had done that hurt the most. It was that he had finally realized it too late, and she wasn't sure if she could let herself fall back into the same trap, the same heartbreak. "I don't know what you want from me, Jake," she said, her voice quivering with a mix of frustration and sorrow. "I can't just erase the past. I can't just forget everything you did." "I don't expect you to," Jake replied, his voice quiet, but determined. I know I've lost your trust, and I may never get it back. But I'm asking for a chance, Emma. A chance to prove that I can be the man you deserve. A chance to make things right, if you'll let me." Emma closed her eyes, her mind in turmoil. The pain, the love, the anger. It was all still there, buried, deep within her. Could she trust him again? Could she let him back into her life after everything he had put her through? "I don't know," she said softly, her voice breaking. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Not after everything." There was a long pause, and she could almost feel the weight of his own regret, the weight of the mistakes he had made. "All I'm asking for is a chance to explain," Jake said, his voice filled with sincerity. "A chance to show you that I have changed." Emma exhaled slowly, trying to calm the whirlwind inside her. The part of her that still loved him, that still wanted to believe in the man he used to be, battled with the part that had built walls too high to ever tear down. "I'll meet you," she finally said, her voice quiet but firm. "But don't expect me to forgive you. Not yet." She hung up the phone, her heart racing. What had she just agreed to? Was this the beginning of something new, or the end of what little she had left of her heart? As she stood there, staring out at the city below, Emma realized that the future was uncertain. The road ahead would be anything but easy. But perhaps, just perhaps, she was ready to face it. And maybe, just maybe, Jake was ready to fight for her for them. But she had to ask herself, was it too late? Emma stared at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was not the same woman who had once shared dreams and laughter with Jake. That girl had been naive, full of hope, believing in love with a man who promised her forever. But the woman who stood now, gazing at herself, was cautious, wiser, perhaps, scarred, definitely. And she had no idea if the chance Jake was asking for was worth the risk. The doorbell rang, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced at the clock. It was the time they had agreed on. With a deep breath, she walked to the door, her hands slightly trembling. She hadn't seen him in 3 years. Would he still have the same effect on her? Would the memories come rushing back the moment she laid eyes on him? She opened the door. There he stood in a black suit that fit him perfectly, his eyes dark with a mix of regret and determination. His jaw was a little more squared. His face harder life had clearly worn him down in ways she hadn't seen before. But underneath it all, the familiar warmth that had once drawn her to him was still there. "Emma," Jake said softly, his voice a quiet plea. She didn't answer at first. She simply stared at him, taking him in, the man who had been her everything, only to walk away when she needed him most. "Come in," she finally said, her voice steady but the weight of the moment hanging between them. As he stepped inside, Emma closed the door behind him. The silence was thick. Neither of them knew how to break it. Jake walked into the living room, looking around at the space that had once felt so familiar. "You've made this place your own," he observed, his tone soft but filled with something she couldn't quite place, regret or both. "Life goes on," Emma replied, sitting down on the couch, her hands folded in her lap. She kept her distance, not wanting to make the first move. Jake sat opposite her, watching her closely. "I know I don't deserve a second chance. But I've spent these 3 years thinking about everything about how I failed you. I should have been there. I should have fought for you, for us, but I didn't." His words, though expected, still hit her like a punch to the gut. It was one thing to hear the words from the past, but to hear them now after everything felt different. The pain resurfaced, fresh and raw, just as it had been when he'd first left. I don't need you to apologize, Jake, she said, her voice calm but with an edge of pain that she couldn't hide. You chose your career. You chose your empire. I was never enough for you. So don't stand here and act like this is something that can be fixed with words. Jake's eyes flashed with guilt, and he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I know I hurt you. I'll never be able to take that back. But I need you to know, it was never about not loving you. It was about me not believing I could give you everything you deserved. I thought I was doing the right thing, chasing success, building something for us, but I was wrong. Emma's chest tightened, and she stood up, pacing around the room. You think that's an excuse? That you made decisions for us? You walked away, Jake. You chose your empire over me. You chose your damn meetings over being there when I needed you the most. Jake stood too, his voice pleading now. I didn't know how to balance it all. I thought success would bring us everything we ever wanted, but it just made me lose sight of what really mattered. You, us. And now, I have to live with that every day. She stopped pacing, her back to him. As she stared out the window, the lights of the city twinkling in the distance. You don't understand, Jake, she said quietly, almost to herself. It wasn't just that you left me. It was the way you did it. The way you walked out of this house, like it didn't matter, like I didn't matter. There was a long pause. Jake didn't respond right away, and for a moment Emma thought he might leave again, just like last time. But then she felt him move closer. I know, he said softly. I know it was cruel, and I'm sorry. I wish I could change what I did, but I can't. All I can do now is tell you the truth, and hope you can see that I've changed, that I'm not the same man who left you. She turned to face him, their eyes meeting for the first time since he had walked in. There was something in his gaze, something that made her pause. Could she really let him back in? Could she allow herself to hope again? I don't know, Jake, she said quietly. I don't know if I can trust you again. The past, the things you did, they still haunt me. I built my life without you. I survived without you. Jake's eyes softened. And I'm sorry that you had to do that alone, he said, stepping closer to her. But I want to be a part of your life again, Emma. I want to be with you. I want to rebuild what we lost, if you'll let me. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She had spent so long guarding herself, never letting anyone in. And now, here he was, asking for a chance. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Jake added, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm asking for a chance to show you that I can be better, that we can be better. Her heart thudded in her chest. She knew the risks. She knew the pain it might bring. But for the first time in 3 years, she also felt something else. Hope. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was naive. But in that moment, she didn't care. I'm not ready to forgive you, Jake, she said, her voice trembling. But maybe, maybe we can start again, slowly, step by step. Jake's face broke into a small, relieved smile, and he reached out, gently taking her hand. In his, I'll wait, he said, his voice full of sincerity. I'll wait as long as it takes. As they stood there, hand in hand, Emma realized that this was just the beginning. The past might never truly disappear, but maybe they could build something new together, something real, something worth fighting for. The days that followed their conversation were filled with a strange tension, one that neither of them could shake. Emma had agreed to try again, but the past loomed over them like an unspoken barrier, too large to ignore. Every word, every glance seemed to carry the weight of everything that had happened before. The woman who had once been in love with Jake still existed, buried beneath layers of resentment and fear. And the man who had left her was now desperately trying to prove he was different. It was a cold Saturday afternoon when they decided to meet again. Emma had spent the week wrestling with her emotions. Was she making a mistake? Could she really open her heart to him again? Every night she lay awake, the ghost of their past haunting her, reminding her of what had been broken. But every day she saw Jake trying. He was doing the little things, calling her, sending her messages, showing up when he said he would. Yet each act of kindness felt like a double-edged sword, cutting through the walls she had so carefully built around her heart. She looked at herself in the mirror before leaving the house, wondering if she could ever feel truly free again. The woman she saw was still the same strong, independent, but her eyes held a trace of vulnerability that hadn't been there before. A part of her had died the day Jake walked out, but could another part of her be reborn? As she entered the restaurant, where they had agreed to meet, she saw him sitting by the window, his posture stiff, his eyes distant. He hadn't seen her yet, so she took a moment to study him. He still looked the same, handsome, sharp, with that same confident aura, but there was a new layer to him now, a weariness, a regret, when he noticed her standing at the entrance. His face softened, but the awkwardness between them was undeniable. She walked towards him slowly, the sound of her heels on the wooden floor loud in the otherwise quiet room. He stood as she reached the table, his hand lingering in the air, unsure whether to reach for hers or to step back. "Hey," he said softly, his voice uncertain. "Hey," Emma replied, her heart hammering in her chest. It felt so strange, so surreal, to be in the same room with him again. They sat down, the air between them thick with unspoken words. Jake cleared his throat, trying to break the silence. I wanted to apologize again, Emma. I know I've said this before, but I'm sorry for everything I did, for walking away, for not being there when you needed me most." Emma looked at him, her eyes steady but her heart racing. "You left me, Jake. You left me when I needed you, when we needed each other. It's not something I can just forget." He nodded, his jaw tight. "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me right now, or ever, but I need you to understand that. I never stopped loving you. That decision, walking away from you, was the biggest mistake I've ever made. I let my career control my life. I let it control us, and I've paid the price for it every single day since." Emma's eyes flickered with emotion, the old hurt rushing back. "You think I don't know that? You think I don't feel it too? You don't get to just walk back into my life and expect everything to be okay. I've spent years rebuilding myself. After you tore me apart," Jake's gaze softened, and for a moment Emma saw the man she had once loved so deeply. But that man had shattered her trust, and it wasn't something easily rebuilt. "I know I don't deserve you," Jake said, his voice a low murmur, "but I'm asking you for a chance to prove that I can be the man you deserve. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for time." Emma felt a pang in her chest. She had spent so long convincing herself that she was better off without him, but now, sitting across from him, it was so much harder than she had imagined. She looked away, her thoughts swirling. "I'm scared, Jake," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared to let you back in, scared to feel that kind of hurt again. I've built my life without you in it. I've learned how to live without you." Jake reached out across the table, his hand trembling slightly as he placed it over hers. "I know, and I can't change the past, but I can change how I am now. I can be here. I can fight for us, if you'll let me." Emma pulled her hand away. Slowly, her heart aching with the weight of his words. "You don't understand. It's not just about being here now. It's about everything that came before. You broke me, Jake, and I don't know if I can let you do that to me again." Jake's face crumpled with guilt. "I never wanted to break you, Emma. I never wanted to hurt you. I was a coward. I was scared, but I'm not scared anymore. I know what I want now, and that's you. I don't care how long it takes. I'll wait, but I'm not giving up." Emma sat in silence, her eyes locked on his, searching for something, anything that might tell her he was telling the truth. She wanted to believe him. She really did. But the scars were still there. The pain was still too raw. "You can't just erase the past, Jake," she said softly, her voice trembling. "You can't just come back and expect me to forget everything. I need more than that. I need to know that you'll stay this time, that you won't just walk away when things get tough again." Jake looked at her with raw sincerity. "I'm not going anywhere, Emma. I'll fight for us, for you, every single day. I'll never walk away again." The words lingered in the air, heavy and uncertain. Emma's heart ached with the conflict swirling inside her. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that they could rebuild what they had lost, but fear held her back. "I need time, Jake," she said finally, her voice quiet but resolute. "I need to think. I need to know that I can trust you again." Jake nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here, waiting, no matter how long it takes." And with that, the weight of their past hung in the silence between them, unresolved, yet full of possibility. The days that followed their conversation were filled with an aching stillness. Emma had spent most of her time thinking about the past, about Jake, about everything she had built after he left. There were moments when she almost convinced herself that maybe, just maybe, they could start over. But then doubt would creep in, dragging her back into the reality of the pain that had once consumed her. She wasn't ready. She wasn't ready to risk her heart again. But Jake had been patient, perhaps too patient. He had given her space, not pushing her for answers, but still there quietly waiting, showing up, sending her little messages to let her know he was thinking of her. It wasn't enough to erase the years of separation, but it was enough to make her question everything she thought she knew about love, about forgiveness, about second chances. It was late one evening when she heard from him again, a simple text message: "I miss you. I'm here whenever you're ready." Her heart skipped a beat. It was exactly what she needed to hear, but also exactly what she wasn't ready for. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a picture photo of a small cafe by the water that they had once visited, long before everything fell apart. It was a place they had shared so many memories in, a place that was now a symbol of what they had lost. The text followed, "Remember this place. I was thinking we could go back, ... if you're ready." Emma stared at the message for a long moment, her thoughts a storm of conflicting emotions. She had told him she needed time, and he had respected that, but the pull she felt toward him, the pull toward the man who had once been her everything, was hard to ignore. She was terrified of opening up again, of giving him a chance to break her heart once more. But there was something in his words, in his sincerity, that made her hesitate. She didn't know if it was hope or desperation, but she needed to find out. She needed to know if they could rebuild what had been broken. She didn't respond right away, though. She needed time to think. The next morning, the sunlight was brighter than usual, almost too bright for the heaviness in her chest. But something had shifted in her overnight. Maybe it was the calm in Jake's voice when he spoke, or maybe it was the fact that they had both been carrying the weight of their past for so long. Whatever it was enough to pull her from the depths of uncertainty. She picked up her phone and typed a reply. "Let's meet. We can talk. But I need to be clear, this isn't a guarantee. Jake, I'm not ready to dive back into anything, but maybe we can start with a conversation." It was a cautious step forward. A first step, but a step nonetheless. Later that day, they met at the cafe by the water. The place hadn't changed much. She'd still had the same warm, welcoming feel, the same soft jazz music playing in the background, the same windows overlooking the quiet lake. It was a familiar setting, and for a moment, Emma felt like she had stepped back in time. But then Jake walked in, and everything changed. He looked the same as he had before his confident stride. His sharp features, but there was something different in his eyes, something softer. The arrogance, the aloofness that had once defined him, was gone, replaced by a vulnerability she hadn't seen in him before. He smiled when he saw her, but there was no excitement in his eyes, only a quiet relief. "Hey," he said, his voice low, almost hesitant. He sat down across from her, his eyes searching her face as if trying to read her thoughts. "Hi," she replied, her own voice betraying a mixture of nerves and uncertainty. She had no idea what to expect from this meeting. Was it just a conversation, or was it a chance to reclaim something they had lost? Jake looked at her, his face serious. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Emma. I know I hurt you, and I know it's going to take more than words to fix this. But I need you to know that I'm here. I'm here for us, for you, for whatever you need." Emma nodded slowly, her heart racing in her chest. "I know you've changed, Jake. I can see it, but I don't know if I'm ready to trust you again. I don't know if I can forgive everything that happened." "I don't expect you to forgive me," Jake said, his voice steady. "I just need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm not running from this anymore. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I'm here for you, for us." Emma's eyes softened slightly. She had never seen him like this, vulnerable, open, raw. But it wasn't enough to undo the damage he had caused. The trust that had been shattered between them couldn't be easily rebuilt. "You've hurt me more than you know," she said softly, her voice breaking. "You walked away when I needed you most. You left me alone with nothing but the memories of what we had. I don't know if I can go back to that." Jake reached across the table, his hand trembling as he took hers. "I don't want you to go back, Emma. I want us to move forward. I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm willing to fight for us. I'm willing to fight for you every day. I'll wait for you, Emma. I'll wait until you're ready." Emma looked down at their joined hands, the warmth of his touch sending a wave of emotion through her. She wasn't ready, not yet, but she wasn't ready to walk away either. For the first time in a long time, she let herself believe in the possibility of something better, something new. "I can't promise you anything," she whispered, her voice full of uncertainty, "but maybe we can start again. Just take it one step at a time." Jake squeezed her hand, his face lighting up with a mixture of hope and relief. "One step at a time," he repeated softly, his voice filled with sincerity. And for the first time, Emma allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild the life they once had, piece by piece. The following days were filled with tentative steps, each one both a breakthrough and a challenge. Emma and Jake had agreed to take things slowly, rebuilding their relationship one day at a time. It wasn't easy. There were moments of joy, sure, but just as often there were moments of doubt and fear. Would the scars of the past ever truly fade? Was it possible to love him again without carrying the weight of everything he had done? Jake made his presence known in the quietest ways. He didn't overwhelm her with grand gestures or promises of a perfect future. Instead, he showed up. He was there in the morning when she needed coffee, in the evening when she came home from a long day at work. His messages were no longer filled with desperation or plea, but with patience. Simple words like, "I'm thinking of you, how's your day going? And I'm here if you need to talk." And with each passing day, Emma began to notice the shift in herself. She wasn't ready to forget the past, but she was beginning to let go of the bitterness. It didn't feel like forgiveness, yet it felt like something softer, something more fragile. She was opening up, and for the first time, she wasn't terrified. One evening, after a long day, Emma sat on her couch, her laptop open in front of her. She had a proposal to write, a project that was important for her career, but all she could focus on was the soft hum of her phone vibrating on the coffee table. Jake had sent another message. "Do you want to go out tonight? Just the two of us. I found a place I think you'd like. No pressure, no expectations. Just us, a dinner, and a good conversation." Emma hesitated. A dinner with Jake was one thing, but a night out, just the two of them, without the walls, without the history, without all the things between them that felt like something else. She had been avoiding this, the moments when it was just the two of them, when the past was impossible to ignore. But there was a part of her that wanted to say yes. There was a part of her that wanted to see who they were now, in this new space they were creating. With a deep breath, she picked up the phone and typed back, "Okay, let's go." When she arrived at the restaurant, the first thing she noticed was how calm she felt. No rush, no tension, just a quiet kind of peace that settled over her as she saw Jake standing by the door, waiting for her. He looked good different somehow. Less like the man who had walked away all those years ago, and more like the man he was trying to be now. He greeted her with a smile that was more genuine than she had seen in a long time. And for a moment, she felt the weight of the years between them ease up just a little bit. "Hey," Jake said softly, his voice carrying a hint of nervousness. "You look amazing." Emma smiled, a small but real smile. "Thanks, you clean up well." He chuckled, a sound that she hadn't heard in ages. They stood there for a moment, looking at each other in silence, unsure of what came next. "Shall we?" he asked, offering his arm. She nodded and took it, the simple gesture feeling more intimate than it probably should have. As they walked to their table, the conversation flowed easily. They spoke about work, about life, about the small things that had filled their time since they had been apart. There was no talk of their past, no mention of what had torn them apart, but there didn't need to be, not yet. After dinner, they walked along the quiet streets. The city was alive with lights and noise, but there was something different about this moment. The buzz of the world faded into the background as they walked side by side, just two people sharing a space they hadn't occupied together in years. "How have you been, really?" Jake asked, his voice soft. "I mean, I know we've been talking, but how have you really been?" Emma took a deep breath. She didn't want to talk about the things that had been holding her back, but she knew that she needed to. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. "I've been okay," she said, her voice steady but quiet. "I've been learning to live without you, and it's been hard. But I've also grown. I've built something for myself. A life that's mine and only mine." Jake nodded, his face thoughtful. "I know, I saw it. The way you've rebuilt your career, your independence. I respect that." There was a silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that only exists when people are being honest with themselves and each other. "Do you think," Jake began, his voice hesitant, "that we can find a way to be together again? Not as we were, but as who we are now, as who we've become." Emma stopped walking, her heart racing. It was the question she had been avoiding, the question that had been hanging in the air between them since they had reconnected. She turned to face him, looking into his eyes for the first time that night. There was no uncertainty there, no hesitation, just the raw truth in his gaze. "I don't know," she said softly. "I really don't, but I'm willing to try. Not for you, not for the past, but for us and for the future." Jake's face softened, and he reached out to touch her hand, his fingers brushing against hers. "I'll wait, however long it takes. I'm not going anywhere." She took a step closer to him, the distance between them closing just a little bit more. She wasn't sure where this road would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she was willing to find out. The days that followed their quiet evening out felt like a delicate balancing act. Jake was patient, giving Emma space to process everything, while also being there when she needed him. They spoke more, shared more, and slowly the wall between them began to soften, but neither of them was rushing. They both understood that trust, once broken, could not be mended overnight. Emma spent the next week thinking about their conversation. She thought about the promise she had made to herself to move forward, but it wasn't as simple as that. Her heart still ached for what they had lost. And yet, there was something stirring inside her, something she hadn't expected. Hope. She had never truly let go of Jake. She had just buried the pieces of him deep within her heart, hidden beneath the weight of her pride and hurt. But now, it was different. She wasn't sure what the future held, but she was willing to explore what was possible, what they could create together, not as the people they once were, but as the people they had become. It was a terrifying thought, but also exhilarating. One morning, Jake invited her to lunch. It was casual, no pressure, just a simple request to meet at a cafe in the corner of town. Emma agreed, still unsure of what to expect, but curious enough to say yes. When she arrived, Jake was already there, sitting at a small table by the window. He looked up when she walked in, and his eyes lit up in a way that made her heart skip. There was something different about him. Now he seemed more vulnerable, more open. "Hey," he said, his voice warm. "You look great. Thanks for meeting me." Emma smiled softly, feeling the old comfort of being around him. "Of course, it's been a while." They sat down, and for a moment, there was a comfortable silence between them. Emma could tell that Jake was trying to figure out what to say, but he didn't rush it. He wasn't trying to fill the air with forced words. Instead, he just allowed the quiet to linger, letting her know that it was okay to take things slow. "How's work going?" Jake asked, after a pause. "I know things have been hectic for you lately." Emma nodded. "It's been busy, but good. I'm starting to feel like I'm finally in control of everything, you know. After everything that happened, I wasn't sure I could get to this point, but here I am." Jake looked at her, his gaze soft and filled with admiration. I'm proud of you, Emma. You've always been strong, even when I didn't see it. I didn't appreciate how much you were carrying." The words hit her harder than she expected. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear him acknowledge her strength, her growth. It was a quiet moment of validation, one that allowed her to feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. "Thanks," she said quietly. "I needed to hear that." They spent the next few hours talking about everything and nothing. They spoke about their careers, about the places they still wanted to visit, the books they'd read, and the songs they were listening to. It was as if they were starting over, but with all the history between them still lingering in the background, waiting to be addressed. As they walked out of the cafe, Jake turned to her with a slightly nervous smile. "So," he said, hesitating for a moment, "how do you feel about taking a trip with me? Just the two of us. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can relax and maybe figure out what comes next." Emma paused, the question hanging in the air. She hadn't been expecting this, a trip, together. It was both tempting and terrifying. "I don't know," she said slowly, searching his face for any hint of what he meant by it. I think I need more time to figure things out. This we're doing it's all so new to me." Jake nodded, understanding. "I get it. I don't want to rush you. I want you to know I'm here whenever you're ready." It was the simplicity of his words that struck her. He wasn't demanding anything from her. He wasn't trying to push her into a decision. He was simply offering the chance to move forward at her pace. "Let's just keep doing this," Emma said finally, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "One step at a time." The weeks passed, and their connection deepened in small, subtle ways. There were no grand declarations, no passionate love letters, just simple moments of understanding, moments where Emma felt Jake's presence without fear, and for the first time she realized that she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of him, and not of what might come. One night, after a long day, they sat on the couch together, watching a movie. The usual awkwardness between them had all but vanished. Emma leaned her head against Jake's shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. "I missed this," Jake whispered, his voice barely above a breath. Emma didn't say anything for a moment, letting the words settle between them. Then, softly, she replied, "I missed this, too." Jake's hand rested lightly on her back, and for a moment, the weight of the past seemed to fade away completely. It wasn't about the mistakes they had made anymore. It wasn't about the time they had lost. It was about right now, the moment they were sharing, the future they were starting to build together, one small piece at a time. As Emma and Jake continued to move forward, the past was never far behind. There were days when the old wounds resurfaced, when the memories of the hurt they had caused each other crept in, uninvited. But instead of retreating, they faced those moments together. One evening, after a quiet dinner, Emma sat across from Jake, her heart heavy. She had been thinking about the things they had left unsaid, about the emotions they were still holding on to. It was time to talk, time to face the truth about what had happened between them and what it would take to truly move forward. "Jake," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion, "there's something we need to talk about. Something I've been avoiding." He looked at her, his expression soft. "What is it?" "I know we've been taking it slow," she said, taking a deep breath, "but I need to know that we're both on the same page. I need to know that that us is real. That it's not just some idea of what we could have been." Jake's face softened, and he reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "It's real, Emma," he said, his voice full of certainty. "I don't want to keep hiding from the past. And I don't want to pretend that everything is okay just because we've been having a good time. But I love you. I always have. And I want to make this work. Not for the future we imagined, but for the future we can create now." Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she held his gaze. She had waited so long for him to say those words, and now that he had, she felt the weight of her own fears begin to lift. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice shaky. "I'm scared of letting myself love you again. I'm scared of getting hurt." "I know," Jake replied, his thumb brushing gently over her hand. "But you're not alone anymore. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, Emma realized something. She wasn't just moving forward for the sake of the past. She was moving forward because she believed, truly believed, that she and Jake could make it. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be perfect, but it was worth fighting for. "Okay," she whispered, her heart filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "Let's do this, together." And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt the future open up before her one step at a time. The days leading up to their trip were a whirlwind of emotions. Jake and Emma had spent weeks reconnecting, repairing their bond piece by piece. Still, as they packed their bags for the weekend getaway, small cabin in the mountains, Emma couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there were still things left unresolved. She had wanted this trip. She wanted to believe in Jake again, to see him as the man she had once loved, but deeper inside, the fear still lingered. What if the past repeated itself? What if the future they were working toward wasn't as strong as the past that had torn them apart? The morning they were to leave, Jake arrived at her door with a soft smile, his eyes filled with warmth and hope. He looked so sure of their future, so confident in the path they were walking together, while she was still standing on the edge, unsure whether she could jump into the unknown with him. "Hey," Jake said, offering her a hand to help her with the bags. "Are you ready?" Emma hesitated for a moment, looking up at him. "Jake, ... there's something I need to say. Something that's been on my mind." Jake stopped in his tracks and turned to face her, his expression softening immediately. "What is it?" Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. "I've been thinking about everything, about us, and I realized something important. I can't keep living in fear. I can't keep holding on to the past, because it's not fair to either of us. I have to let go of the anger, of the hurt, but also the fear. Fear of losing you again. Fear of getting hurt. I have to trust that we can move forward." Jake's face softened, his eyes filled with something she hadn't seen in a while. Hope. "Emma, I'm ready to take that leap with you," she continued, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know what the future holds, but I do know that I want to face it with you, and I want to believe that this time we're really going to make it." The silence between them hung heavy, but it was different from before. It wasn't filled with fear or doubt. It was filled with understanding, a quiet kind of strength that had grown in the space between them over the past months. "I don't want to ever lose you again," Jake said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I've hurt you, and I can never change that. But I can promise you that I will never take you for granted again. I'm here. I'm all in, Emma, and I will be for as long as you'll have me." Emma nodded, a single tear slipping down her cheek as she reached out to hold his hand. "I believe you." The drive to the mountains was peaceful, the two of them lost in their thoughts as the scenery passed by. The cabin they arrived at was small but cozy, nestled between the towering trees. It felt like the perfect place to escape everything: the noise of the city, the weight of the past, the uncertainty of the future. That night they sat by the fire, the soft crackle of the flames filling the silence between them. Jake pulled Emma closer, his arm wrapped around her shoulders. "You know," Jake said quietly, breaking the silence, "I never thought I'd get this chance again." Emma smiled, resting her head on his chest. "Neither did I." They didn't need to say much more. They both knew that this moment, this trip, wasn't just about escaping. It was about confronting their fears, their doubts, and stepping forward. Together, as the fire burned low, they sat in quiet contemplation. For the first time, Emma felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the peace that came from forgetting the past. It was the peace that came from accepting it, and choosing to move forward despite it. The next morning, after a peaceful night's sleep, Emma and Jake woke up to a quiet, crisp morning. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting a soft glow over the snow-covered trees. They went for a walk through the woods, the fresh air clearing their minds. "I never thought I'd say this," Emma said, laughing lightly as she took in the beauty of the scenery, "but this is exactly what I needed." Jake looked at her, his eyes full of love. "You deserve peace, Emma. You deserve to feel free, to live, without fear of what might happen." Emma smiled softly, taking his hand in hers. "I think I'm finally starting to believe that." As they walked, Emma realized that the future they had been working towards was no longer just a distant possibility. It was something real, something tangible. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of Jake, not of what might come, because for the first time in years, she was ready to embrace it, all the love, the pain, and the uncertainty without fear. That afternoon, sitting on the porch of the cabin, Emma and Jake talked about everything. They talked about their dreams, their goals, and how they could make it work together. "I've spent so much time trying to move on," Emma admitted, her voice soft but steady. "And now I realize that I haven't really been moving on at all. I've just been running away from everything, from the love we had, from the possibility of it again. But I can't do that anymore. I want to build something new with you, Jake, and I'm ready to fight for it." Jake squeezed her hand, his heart swelling with pride. "I'm with you, Emma, every step of the way." As the day came to an end, and they sat together on the porch, watching the stars appear in the night sky, Emma knew that this was just the beginning. It wasn't going to be easy, but it would be worth it. They had come so far, and now, with each other, they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Months passed, and the life Emma and Jake were building slowly but surely became something they both cherished. They continued to take it one step at a time, learning, growing, and rebuilding the trust that had been broken. There were still moments of doubt, moments when the past threatened to rise again, but they faced those moments together, never retreating, never turning back. Their love was no longer about what had been, was about what they could create together, now, in the present. And as Emma stood beside Jake, watching him with their son Noah, playing in the yard one afternoon, she knew that their love wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was worth every second they had spent fighting for it. Together, they had built something stronger than they ever thought possibly. Future full of love, hope, and endless possibilities.